So Cyberpunk 2077 was kind of considered to be the impossible port for the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, if you're on the outside looking in, you're probably thinking, hey, this is a 6-year-old game. Of course it should run on hardware coming out in 2025. And to that I say, do you remember the launch of this game on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One? It was not great. You know, it was anything but great, and I couldn't even think people could say it was good or acceptable. It was so bad that Sony removed it from PSN. I actually played the game on the Xbox One S, and it was terrible, man. My game actually got a game-breaking glitch where I could not progress through the story anymore. There was textures that would never load, characters that you would be talking to would disappear and reappear. It was a broken, buggy mess. Now, of course, CD Projekt Red has upgraded the game for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series platforms, and it's definitely in a much better state than it is now. But those systems are dedicated home consoles, not systems you could take with you on the go and play Cyberpunk 2077 portably. So how does the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game fare? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge thank you to today's video sponsor, Jsu. Today's video is sponsored by Jsu, and Jsu was kind enough to send over a whole slew of Nintendo Switch 2 accessories, and I wanted to highlight a few for you guys that I think you'll enjoy. The first one is the Game Card Case 40. This will hold up to 40 games for your Nintendo Switch or your Nintendo Switch 2 cartridges, and this is something I wish I had a couple of months ago because I got a lot of physical cartridges somewhere and I don't know where they are. Next up is their shock absorbent storage case. You like to throw your Switch around, you want to throw it at someone, use it as a weapon. I don't know what you want to do, but if you want to get nitty and gritty and down and dirty with your Nintendo Switch 2, the shock absorbent storage case will make sure that your Switch 2 is protected inside of this case. And the final one I want to show you guys is the colorful ultra-thin carrying case. Obviously, very Switch 2 inspired in the color scheme. There is a place to store your physical game cartridges, and it's very soft on the inside. Check out these products and more from Jsu by checking out the link in the description box down below. And a huge thank you to Jsu for sponsoring today's video. So I'm not going to get super in-depth about like the story of Cyberpunk 2077 because I really want to focus more so on the Switch 2 version, what they've added, and how, you know, it performs in terms of gameplay and in visuals. But just for a little too long didn't read edition of the Cyberpunk 2077 story, you pick one of 3 different characters, but you always play as a character named V. They just have different backgrounds that kind of affect how you progress throughout the game. It is a game of betrayal and Keanu Reeves and death and some boobies in there as well. It's a very adult-ridden game, but the gist of it is you're trying to find an augment that would allow you to gain immortality because the world is based on implants. It obviously takes place in the future with cybernetics and all sorts of crazy stuff. I don't know if the world will ever get to a point like that where we get stuff like that, but it would kind of be interesting. I mean, there's kind of some stuff happening right now with like Neuralink and stuff like that. But basically, the way the game plays out is an action RPG in an open, sprawling world called Night City that definitely has a very unique aesthetic to it. And, you know, it's a pretty large map. It's very detailed. There's lots of intricacies in there as well. And the story itself is actually pretty well written. Like, it's not a boring story. There are twists and turns. Your decisions will impact the game as well, as far as progressing and meeting different characters or betraying different characters, or even how your character plays out, because there is a very large skill tree that you, of course, have full control over. And you can make your character more technologically advanced, a more brutish kind of person, somebody who's better at stealthing, somebody who's better at intelligence and talking their way through out of situations. There's a lot of different ways that you can play Cyberpunk 2077, but I definitely think that the stealth mechanic is kind of encouraged a bit in this game. You can always go guns blazing, but it seems like it was kind of developed with at least a little bit of stealth in mind should you want to do that. Of course, there's hacking of things. You can hack characters, augments, you can hack security cameras and all sorts of stuff, and it all sort of plays into the story. and Keanu Reeves, because he is a big part of the story as well. But let's talk about the actual experience on the Nintendo Switch 2, because like I said, this is a hybrid system. And going into this, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I know I said that with other games, but really, like, a video only shows you so much. If you're not actually playing the game, like, you can't understand how it looks and how it performs. And there's been lots of videos online showcasing just some generic gameplay of the game, kind of curated stuff. There's been some alleged images and videos that have been flowing around showing the game, crippling to run as far as a functional game. I've played about 9 hours thus far of the game, and really, I think it's a mostly positive experience. You're not getting all the bells and whistles that you have on the other consoles, but you are getting some things that are exclusive to the console version of the Nintendo Switch 2 that I think are very cool. In terms of performance, you have two different modes. There is a quality mode and a performance mode. Quality mode is at 30 frames per second. Performance mode targets 40 frames per second. Now, it mostly keeps up the 40 frames per second in the indoor areas, but it does seem like it dips more in the outdoor areas, and that can be a little bit jarring if you're going in and out of different places, and it does seem like it impacts the overall, when you're outside sort of things in terms of frame rate. I've actually been playing the game strictly on quality mode, which is targeting 30 frames per second. I've been in some very chaotic situations, as you can see with my gameplay here, as haggard as some of it might be, but I've been in large shootouts with, various people on foot. I've been in large shootouts with various people in vehicles. I have run over people. I have been chased by people, and really, it holds its frame rate more often than not. There are little hiccups here and there, like, for sure, but it seems like those are auto saves that the game is actually doing, because I noticed it mostly happens whenever the saving icon pops up in the left corner of the screen. And that's kind of when you're going throughout different areas within Night City that you start to see that. So, I wouldn't say it's the best experience of Cyberpunk 2077, but it looks pretty damn good when you are playing on an HDR compatible screen. I think it really makes the game pop, and it's actually a really kind of graphical showpiece, at least in some regards, for the Nintendo Switch 2. You can also, of course, play the game in handheld mode, which is where I say I played like 70% of it, but I actually just got a new monitor for my work setup that has HDR on it. Is a 4K 120 hertz monitor, and it looks pretty damn good, all things considered. You are going to get some frame rate dips here and there. You are going to get a little bit less city density as far as, the amount of cars and the amount of people, but there's still lots of nice lighting effects, and there's still lots of, kind of awe-inspiring moments when you're just kind of soaking in the sights and sounds of the city. And I feel like the gameplay, as far as the frame rate is concerned and how it affects the gameplay, it's really, decent. I've been in large gunfights, and I never felt like the game was, crippling me or putting me at a disadvantage because of potential frame rate issues. And I mean, there's all sorts of different graphical effects that are going on, such as explosions and stuff like that, and people, getting mutilated from damage from the weaponry and stuff like that. And it never really got to a point where I was like, oh, well, this is kind of, a bit of a problem for me. This is kind of something that is definitely very noticeable. Is it going to be as smooth in terms of performance as the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series versions of the game? No. But that's not really what this system is supposed to be. If you compare it to other handhelds, I would say it actually looks better. And we've seen comparisons of the Switch 2 version versus the Steam Deck version of the game. And the Switch 2 version is definitely way more capable than what the Steam Deck is capable of. And of course, there are some unique Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive features in the game as well, such as being able to take one of your Joy-Cons and turn it into a mouse, and you basically have mouse support. And it's actually pretty well done. It's a bit sensitive, and by a bit sensitive, I mean it's extremely sensitive when you first try it, but you can kind of get used to it, or you can adjust the sensitivity settings. Of course, it is better to have like a hard surface. I messed around with it a little bit when on my desk here, and it works very well. It's just a bit sensitive. There is one drawback of it, though, that I do hope CD Projekt Red will at least, I don't know, added via a patch or something like that. And that would be being able to do the mouse control and being able to customize your controls, because as it stands now, you actually can't. And I feel like that's a bit of a disadvantage. Now, beyond just the standard mouse controls you can do, of course, there are gyro controls as well that can help you with your aiming. I'm not really a huge gyro fan in 2025, unless it's like the Greek sandwich. Like, I'll mess with a gyro there. But as far as, utilizing it for, first-person shooters or third-person shooters, I know a lot of people do like it. But just for me, like, I'm good. I lived through the Wii era. I got my fix of, those kind of controls. But there is a time and a place for it. Is Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch 2 like a perfect port? Like, no. I don't think anyone was anticipating it being a perfect port. And yes, if you have a PlayStation 5 or you have an Xbox Series X and you really want to play the game and you don't plan on like leaving your house or going anywhere and playing the game on the go, then sure, buy the game on there, because it is now at least a very fun game. But if you are someone who enjoys playing games portably and also plays games at home, like, I think this is a really, really well done port, all things considered. And the fact that, it is all on the cartridge, I think is actually something that is going to be a bit of an anomaly this generation. More often than not, third-party companies are not going to put their full games on a 64-gigabyte cartridge. I know that might sting quite a bit. I know that's not what you want to hear, but you need to hear the truth. And if it has to come from me, then so be it. But I do think that this is something that actually makes the game a bit unique and a bit special. So it does also have the Phantom Liberty DLC. I haven't really had a chance to play much of that because I'm kind of just going through the main game right now. I did boot it up. I did test it out for a little bit. I have heard some things as far as performance being slightly worse in that version, or in that mode, I should say, which is the, kind of DLC at the end game of Cyberpunk 2077. I messed around with it for about a half hour or so. I didn't notice anything too egregious, but that is something worth noting. I guess if you're just buying it for the Phantom Liberty DLC, there could be some issues arising with that. But all things considered, I'm happy with my purchase. Like, I think it's a very good version of the game, considering, this is one of the earlier Nintendo Switch 2 third-party games that's really like a sizable sort of thing. I think it's pretty impressive. And considering CD Projekt Red's track record, when you look at something like The Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch, the vanilla version of that game to the version we have of the game now is like night and day. They added in so many different graphical settings and different adjustments that you could do. And I do wonder if this game will also get some little refinements in terms of that, because I feel like this is something that they're going to want to support for quite a while, because they probably want the game to sell on the Nintendo Switch too. Anyways, guys, those are my thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077. This is all my gameplay footage. I think it speaks for itself. If you're interested in it, hey, there you go. If not, hey, thanks for watching till the end of the video. And as always, guys, thank you for watching till the end of the video. I want to give a huge thank you to Jsu for sponsoring today's video. Check out the link in the description box down below to get you some new Nintendo Switch 2 accessories. I really like that game card thing. I'm already filling that thing up because it's way easier to keep them in there than in some of the things I've been keeping them in. And as always, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.